Pieces of Hate, Episode 4, The Truth About Mass Shootings, with Paul Elam and Tom Golden. Let's see what they're up to.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with A Voice for Men, and I am joined, as always, by Tom Golden from menaregood.com. Hello, Tom. How you doing?
Hello, Paul. I feel better all over than any place else.
Well, I'm glad you do, because I've been thinking a lot about mass murder.
Oh,
And I think we ought to talk about it.
yeah.
Not so much mass murder, but how the press is covering it. And I know you've been seeing this too, but we've got the press out there pretty much saying, oh, killed 10 people, toxic masculinity. And even better, a voice for men, men's rights activists.
Yes. It's not just men. It's only certain men who are causing this problem.
So Tom and I decided that we'd better do a Pieces of Hate about this piece of hate.
Yeah, it really is.
Which is the mainstream media blaming mass killings on the men's rights movement, on men in general, of course, and on sections of men, incels, MRAs, whatever, but generally pointing the finger at the wrong problems. And so we've done a little bit of our own homework, and we're going to talk some about that. And why don't we start with a question for you, Tom?
What's the question?
I know you did some digging. In terms of trying to understand the etiology or the what makes mass killings happen, danger signs, areas of high risk, things like that, what really should be, it's obvious that it's not MRAs and that it's not toxic masculinity or any other feminist creation or confabulation. But there are some common denominators, are there not?
Oh boy, there's a lot of them, I think.
And so why don't we talk some about that first, because we got to counteract this bullshit that the press is misleading people with.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of places we could start. What do you think?
I'm thinking autism.
Yeah, okay, good.
And here's a delicate subject, and I'd sure like your input on it. The last thing that I want to do is further stigmatize people that are already stigmatized.
Yes.
It's not good for them. It's not healthy. At the same time, we've got Dylan Roof, Nicholas Cruz, Adam Lanza. You go, this guy, Alec Manassian, just this most recent one. You go down the list over and over and over again. You see them. These young men are somewhere on the autism spectrum. So I guess the first thing is, how do we have a conversation about the unusually high incidence of autistic young men in mass killings without painting all autistic young men as potential mass killers, which wouldn't be fair either?
No, it's not fair at all, because I think if you look at the research, I think what I've seen anyway, maybe you've seen some other studies, but the studies I've seen have shown that autistic people are generally commit fewer crimes than the general population. So the vast majority of the autistic people are not into crimes and being criminals. However, there is a very small subset that apparently really explodes. So it's a tricky one. It's not an easy piece, and you can't say, autistics are like this or that or the other, but
well, ergo, we refer to autism as something that's on a spectrum. It's a wide range of different things.
And I think we all have some of it.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing.
But at the same time, this does come up over and over again. And what I found interesting is that one of the other things that seems to keep coming up over and over again about these young men on the spectrum is bullying.
Yeah.
They've been bullied.
Yes.
Autistics tend to be socially isolated. They have difficulty reading social cues in a lot of ways and knowing how to interact as neurotypical people do.
Yes.
And so a problem fitting there is an issue for them. And consequently, as we all know, children can be cruel and they get bullied.
Yep. Yep.
and that seems to be part of the picture. So maybe the stigma should be on bullies. I don't know. But
Well,
this is also seems to fit the pattern with the autistic young men who do commit mass murders.
yes, I think the bullying is a part of the social aspect, but also there's the abused as children piece, and that,
Which another, I guess you could almost interchangeable.
yes, it's another piece that goes in. In fact, we should probably put a link to that study that we're both kind of talking about, but not talking about the study. We'll put a link to that in the low bar so that people can see it for themselves. Because there have been some fascinating studies on all of this, and the one that we're kind of dancing around is the one that did the Venn diagram, right?
Right. That was a bit of a confusing Venn diagram.
Yeah, it was pretty confusing, but if you read the basic data in the study, it was pretty fascinating. There's 239 mass murderers, serial killers that they looked at. And of those 239, 67 apparently were autistic in one degree or another. 58, I think, had been bullied or suffered child abuse. I think that's right. And then 51 had experienced head injury of some sort. And then the article helps to, or it doesn't really help because it's kind of confusing, but it shows that those three kind of work together. And a lot of times it's the three together that are a part of the picture of a person who goes into a mass shooting. Does that make sense?
At the very least, yes, or at the very least that would, lean toward having outbursts, aggressive outbursts.
Aggressive outbursts, or what they call amok.
Yep.
Did you know that's a psychiatric diagnosis?
No, I did not know that amok was a psychiatric word.
Apparently it was in the DSM-4.
I'll never use it again.
The history is that the anthropologist found this thing called amok in the 1850s in Malaysia, where people would just go absolutely bonkers crazy and kill animals or kill people or destroy property. And they called it amok. That was the name of it. And the DSM actually breaks it down into two. It's what I've heard. I've never seen the damn thing in the DSM, but I've heard they break it down to two. One is bear amok, which is like a complete and utter sadness that's like running amok in sadness. And amok itself is when you're just completely gone nutso. So the point is that this kind of thing that we're seeing with the mass shootings is not new.
Right.
This has been going on for hundreds of years. The difference is that in today's world, we have better weapons. You can kill more people more quickly. And so when someone runs amok, they can make a big mess.
Oh, yeah. I was reading, as a matter of fact, there's a long history I found of mass shootings, mass killings.
Yeah.
And they were having school shootings back in the 1700s.
Is that right? 1700s?
Yes.
I did not know that.
So this is not something particularly new, but
Right.
as you said, we
Right.
have much more lethality in the weapons now and
Yes.
much more access. Not that I'm complaining about access. But I guess another part of my worries about this were, especially with the way that the media handles it, one, like I said, I don't want to stigmatize autistic people because I see what being stigmatized done. And I say that for a good reason, because right now what the media is doing is stigmatizing males.
Yes.
With
Any chance they get.
any chance they get to do this, that they're blaming men, and look where that's led us. It's not gotten us very far. It's a horrible thing to do.
Oh God!
One,
That crazy thing at the University of Texas, where they're what is it they're doing? They're helping men get rid of their masculinity or something.
oh God, yes, Texas, say it ain't so. God, my Texas.
Oh man! If Texas is going, you're in bad shape.
Man, good Lord, I'm glad I moved to Southwest Virginia.
Yeah, really. What we're saying.
But yeah, this has turned into quite a mess. We do have a problem. And, an article that you dug out, which I used for reference in a video I did on this, or maybe, no, this was one my partner dug out, that demonstrated that the incidence of autism is going up drastically.
Yes.
And now, you and I had a discussion about possible causes of that. The
Yes.
article itself really didn't speculate
Yeah.
as to any possible reason. but we're not talking about a slow increase. We're talking about like 150% increase over 4 years measured.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's
Really?
not just autism. There's a lot of different diseases that are doing the same thing, you know, that most people are thinking is possibly related to endocrine disruptors.
From our
That's
use
a
of
whole other
plastic.
topic. We should do a video on endocrine disruptors, which is a fascinating and frustrating topic.
Yeah, I watched the video that you sent me, and I've done a little bit of digging. There's a lot of digging to do about this and a lot to read. It's a very complex issue, but
Yes.
so that we're not talking in code speak for the audience here, what Tom and I are talking about is endocrine disruptors that are a byproduct of the plastics industry and our use of plastics
Yeah.
in everyday life. And, you know, occasionally you read something about, you know, they're saying don't microwave plastics because of, you know, carcinogens that get released. But apparently it may be that there's some really, really gnarly stuff that comes out of using plastics that has nothing to do with whether it's microwave.
Well, not just that, but if you have a bottle of water that's in plastic and it gets warm and hot, when you drink it, it tastes sort of weird. You're drinking endocrine disruptors.
Oh
Literally.
boy.
Oh boy. So, and the endocrine disruptors basically are fake estrogens. So they confuse the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is so sensitive that even a tiny bit of something can confuse the dickens out of it. And so what we see now is confused frogs and reptiles and whatever, where the male of the frogs and reptiles are literally don't have penises anymore. It's like their genitals are just a big mess. And we're starting to see that, sadly, in boys more often now, because the endocrine disruptors are mimicking the estrogens, which of course throws the boys off completely. You know, their whole system gets thrown off, and he becomes more like a little girl. So, and the little girls are getting more and more like little girls. You know, I think the black females have their menses at 8 or 9 years old now, which has dropped down. The white girls, I think it's 11 or something like that. It used to be 13. So these estrogens may very well be dropping the date for the menses for little girls too, as they also extend the time out for boys' puberty. But we're kind of getting way off of the mass shootings, aren't
Well,
we?
no, it's fascinating stuff. And,
Yeah, it really
you
is.
know, we never
It's
know.
scary.
I mean, we should come back and do that.
Yeah, this one's
I
pretty
think a
scary.
discussion on that. Obviously, I've got a lot to learn about it that I don't know.
Yeah,
but
the
it sounds
craziest
like
thing-
very, very alarming stuff.
Yeah, man. The craziest thing is that the corporations are spending millions and millions of dollars to keep it hush hush, you know, because they're going to lose huge amounts if it ever comes out. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. And that's scary. And of course, the reason that it is relevant, though, is because one of the things apparently from the increased saturation of endocrine disruptors throughout our whole environment is what? An increase in autism.
Yes, exactly.
So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But you know, what I would just like to know, though, is why a couple of MRAs got to sit here and be some of the few people that ever in earnest are really trying to look at, well, okay, shut up a school. Let's really try to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if we do identify that it's part of the risk of being on the autism spectrum, we can develop interventions and maybe provide support and assistance
Yes.
in ways that would be helpful with that. But we're not having an honest conversation about it.
No,
The
just
media-
those bad people, those bad
yes.
MRAs,
Yeah, it's
completely unhelpful.
completely unhelpful and evil,
Yep.
in my opinion.
Or it's
evil.
Men.
Yeah, yeah,
Men are bad.
yes. Men are bad. Guns are bad.
Yeah.
Being right of Chairman Mao is bad.
You know, the other piece that plays into this is the whole psychiatric drug stuff. You know,
Yeah, somebody brought that up in my comments, and I think it's antidepressants, and I think it's worth mentioning. It's not something I addressed before. The first time that I did a talk on this subject of this that stemmed from this most recent massacre, but it is something. There is, you know, psychotropic medications. There's all kinds of things that we really don't check out thoroughly because there's so much money at stake.
Yes, and actually they've done some research now, and they know some things. And the FDA puts out warnings, on these labels. You can hear them on the TV commercials. Oh, if you, if you have an arm cut off, you might want to stop taking this medication. But the FDA warning for the SSRIs, the antidepressants, is this. Listen to this. The FDA issued a black box warning in 2004 for antidepressants, advertising that they're associated with suicidal ideation and behavior in 2 to 3 children out of every 100 who are administered these drugs. So 2 to 3 out of every 100 kids who are taking antidepressants are likely to experience suicidal behavior or thoughts. That's huge. And what they don't talk about there is that all of these drugs, the SSRIs, the benzodiazepines, and the Ritalin type drugs are all connected to violence. The SSRIs obviously, but the benzos, people don't know that Valium and Librium basically also have a part of them that can create violence within people. I mean, it's one of the side effects, as it is with the Ritalin drugs. It's the same thing. So
and certainly when there's synergy of mixing benzodiazepines with alcohol or something like that, that increases drastically.
Yes. And we've got at least 50 million people in this country who are taking these drugs. 50 million.
I don't know if it's still true, Tom, but when I went through all of my education and testing and got my license for working with chemical dependency clients, at that point in time, Valium was the most frequently prescribed drug in the history of mankind.
Yes, like candy.
Yep,
like candy. I remember working in mental hospital in the 1970s, and we had these women who were coming in who were having these, and so they'd put them in, they'd pose them, they'd put them in restraints and whatever. And it turns out later that these were all women who were withdrawing from Valium. They'd been addicted, they'd been cut off from the drug, and whammo, they go into this withdrawal, and no one knew it.
And it's quite possible to die from that withdrawal.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
indeed.
Boy.
So these are dangerous drugs. And, the other piece of this is that the psych drugs are really helpful sometimes.
Yes, they are.
There's a lot of good done from a lot of these. So this is not a black or white kind of issue, but it's a tangly issue. It's one that's difficult.
And it's also tied up in money, too. There are, like Tom said, some antidepressants for some people. It's a real art to try to, cycle people through drugs and find out what's really going to work for them. And of course, in the meantime, you're hearing these warnings saying, well, if the drug we're giving you for depression makes you want to kill yourself, then
stop taking it.
It's like this probably isn't the right drug for you. But what you won't hear for them, and I don't mind mentioning it here, what you'll never hear from the medical establishment about this are words like St. John's wort.
Yes.
Which for some people provides drastic relief to depression.
And works very, very well.
Yes.
Yes.
Folks, if you struggle with depression and you don't want to take meds, can't take meds, won't tolerate them, whatever, don't like psychiatrists, if you run out of options, it's worth a try.
Mm. Yeah, we'll also leave a link to an article by Peter Breggin, who's an MD, who some people call the conscience of psychiatry, who's written a good article.
Needs one.
Well, really, you need more than one. But he's written an article on the whole breakdown of psychiatric drugs and the connection with violence. It's a fascinating article. I'll put that in the low bar too.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's kind of a tricky wicket, isn't it? You know what else pisses me off about this, Paul?
I want to know, what pisses you off about this?
Bless America! When I went back and looked at the number of mass shootings since 2010 in the United States, and then divided by 8, I was kind, I guess, divided by 8, 7, I forget which it was. And it's about 53 people a year die from mass shootings. And that struck me. I thought, 53 people a year. Because I knew that bee stings kill 58 people a year in the United States. And the media doesn't really cover bee stings, do they?
No, it's not exactly.
But the media depends
Kind of
on
about-
these high violence, people dying kinds of issues to make money. And they make money on it 24 hours a day. They have this stuff playing into people's homes about what happened, who did this, who did that, blah, 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 blah. And to me, it's just disgusting.
Well, sure. And not only do they make money off of it, but it's always an opportunity for them to push their narrative about the world.
Yes.
Every time
Yes,
they report
exactly.
mass murder, they're going to tell us, you're going to hear the words toxic masculinity. You're
Yes.
going to see Amanda Marcotte or Jessica Valenti pulled up as a fucking expert, one of those morons. And they're going to, they're going to
And the
have
thing that pisses me off the
know
most,
all about it. It's toxic masculinity.
those terrible men.
And if we just taught boys to cry and hug their Barbie dolls.
The thing that pisses me off the most, Paul, is that the media says nothing about the 35,000 men each year who kill themselves. They say nothing. They don't cover that. 35,000 men every year in the United States kill themselves. The media is like, where's the next mass shooting?
No, the media is like, hey, well, women attempt suicide more than men do.
Of course.
That's the media's response, is to
Yes.
come up with that bullshit statistic that every pathetic, manipulative cry for help that a woman ever did is somehow equitable to a dead man. And
Yeah.
that's what they're saying.
Yep. It's crazy. Absolutely insane. You know, we need to worry about the people who just get infections from bee stings, not the ones who die from it.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy stuff.
Yes, it is. But it's the world we live in. This is why you and I are doing this.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Because,
God bless men.
man, it pisses me off too. It pisses me off that we've got, all right, so it's only 53. I mean, and I know you feel the same way. I would love to be able to save those 53 people every year
Absolutely.
who
Yes.
get killed by shooters, but we're not going to do that by listening to Amanda Marcotte or David Futrell or Michael Kimmel or any of these other liars about these problems whose careers depend on misleading the public
Yes.
about what causes these things.
Well said.
Ugh.
Well said. That's exactly it. And, you know, I do have compassion for those 53 people, and we do need to be concerned about them and work with that. But I don't think the media's tactic is really very helpful at all, just like you said so well.
Plus, when somebody says, well, what do you want to cover? The 53 mass shootings a year or 35,000 suicides. I'm kind of prone to think that the 35,000 suicides does deserve a little bit of attention. You know, if you look at the sidebar right now of ABFM, we have a timer. It's a counter that's in the sidebar there that is geared to go up one digit every time a man commits suicide somewhere in the world. And we set it back to time it from when ABFM was founded. And just a couple of months ago, we went over 10 million.
Jeez. 10 million.
10 million men worldwide took their own lives in the time since ABFM was established. Is worse than what happened in Nazi Germany. It's more death anyway.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy.
So,
Ugh.
Ugh is right.
Mass shootings, suicide. We're on it tonight, Paul.
Yeah. Oh, hell, you've got, in 3 days, more veterans in the United States will kill themselves than people who are killed by shootings, mass shootings.
God, that's probably true.
Annually. Yeah, we estimate 22 to 25 veterans a day.
Is
One
that
every
right?
hour. Yeah.
Just
one an hour.
veterans.
Just veterans.
Holy schmoly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's staggering when you look at what's happened even since Vietnam. There's been, there was 58,000 died in combat and combat-related activity in Vietnam.
Right.
And over 100,000 have suicided
Jeez.
since the war.
Wow.
twice as many, almost twice as many that died in Vietnam have killed themselves.
It's crazy.
That's just from the post-traumatic stress. And of course, you see people like David Futrell and the other feminist clones out there, Valenti and the lot, were trying to sell us a narrative that we had Vietnam because of masculinity.
Of course.
And these guys, died pretty much protecting their right to spout this bullshit.
Some of them died without having the right to vote.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yep. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Ugh. But I felt the need to do this talk with you, Tom, because I just wanted to vent a little bit more about this. I wasn't done. I did do a talk about it, but I wanted to talk about it some more because I wanted to remind people we need to call these publications out, the ones that still leave comments after their bullshit articles.
Yes.
A lot of publications have learned not to have comments.
Yes. And a lot more are doing that these days.
Because then intelligent thinking people will come in and shoot their bullshit down.
Tear them apart.
They don't want that.
Yep.
But if you're out there and you see those people pushing this bullshit, which is honestly, it's killing people.
Let them have it.
And it's blood money they're making. Let them have it. I hope you do.
I agree. I'm with you. Well,
I think we did it, Golden.
are we finished?
Unless you got anything else, I'm good.
I'm good too. But
want to remind everybody, if you're watching this on my channel, you will see a link to the International Conference on Men's Issues. Come on and get your tickets coming up in July. Nearly sold out, but we, as usual, we want a sold out crowd.
great.
Every time. We want wall-to-wall people there having
Indeed.
fun, consuming too much alcohol, and having a blast with like-minded people.
Indeed. Speaking of which, both Paul and myself have Patreon sites. Come on and visit us there. Speaking of blast with like-minded people, that's kind of what we're trying to do is get people together, more and more red-pilled men to be with red-pilled men. So,
Absolutely. We're both creating avenues for that on our Patreon.
Yeah.
So obviously a good reason to support both of us. But if you, obviously I understand if you like me better than you like. So if you want,
I don't understand that.
yeah, okay.
Just because you have 10 times more people than I do.
Now it's me talking shit. Okay. But support one of us and come on and join these groups, man. Tom's doing it, I'm doing it. And they're a lot of fun, a lot of guys getting together and just feeling normal for a change.
I just started that private forum, so we'll have some fun with that too.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear updates about how that goes.
Yeah, it should be interesting. And let's not forget, men are good.
Oh, yes, they are.
That's for you. All right.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Let's see. How do you stop this?